Beneath the sand of southern Iraq, archaeologists have uncovered the foundation of a structure so massive that, in its own time, it may have been the tallest building human beings had ever constructed. Its base alone stretched nearly 300 feet on each side. Its name, in the ancient language of the people who built it, meant something like the foundation of heaven and earth. For centuries, scholars quietly assumed the biblical story of the Tower of Babel was simply legend, a moral tale about human pride, invented without any real historical anchor. Then archaeologists began digging into the ruins of an ancient city called Babylon. What they found was not proof of a myth. It was something considerably stranger, a real kingdom, a real king remembered across multiple ancient civilizations, and a real tower, built in a real city, whose ruins still sit, largely unexcavated, beneath the modern landscape of Iraq. Tonight we are going to ask a question most retellings of this story never bother to ask. Not simply what happened at Babel, but what kingdom was actually standing there when it happened, who ruled it, and what the buried physical remains of that kingdom can actually tell us today. We are not going to tell you archaeologists have found the literal Tower of Babel intact, waiting beneath the desert to be unveiled. That claim would not be honest, and the physical evidence does not support it in that direct, simple form. What we are going to do is trace, carefully and honestly, the real historical kingdom the book of Genesis places at the center of this story, the land of Shinar, the city of Babel, and the mysterious founding king named Nimrod, and set it directly alongside what archaeology has actually recovered from ancient Mesopotamia. Real cities, a real tower structure called a ziggurat, and a civilization whose scale and ambition genuinely rivals anything the biblical text describes. By the end, you will understand the difference between the tower as literary symbol and the kingdom as historical reality, and why the buried remains of that ancient world may tell us more about the true meaning of Babel than any single tower ever could. To understand Babel, we first need to understand the land Genesis calls Shinar, the broad, fertile plain between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in what modern historians call Mesopotamia, roughly corresponding to much of modern Iraq. This was, by any measure, one of the true cradles of human civilization. Here, communities developed some of the earliest known writing systems, some of the earliest cities, and some of the earliest large-scale organized states anywhere in the archaeological record. The flat, river-fed plain offered extraordinary agricultural potential, but little in the way of stone or timber for construction, a scarcity that shaped the region's most distinctive architectural solution. Without abundant stone, Mesopotamian builders turned to what the land offered in abundance: river mud, shaped into bricks and dried or fired in kilns. Genesis itself notes this directly, describing the builders of Babel saying to one another, "Let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly," and using brick for stone and bitumen, a naturally occurring tar-like substance found in the region, for mortar. This is not incidental detail. It reflects genuine, accurate knowledge of Mesopotamian building practice, distinct from construction methods used in stone-rich regions like Canaan or Egypt, and it is one of several details historians point to when discussing the narrative's grounding in real regional knowledge. Politically and religiously, this was a world of city-states, each typically centered on a major temple complex dedicated to a patron deity, with the city's ruler often understood to hold a specially sanctioned religious role, connecting the human community to the divine order. Massive stepped temple towers, known by the Akkadian term ziggurat, became the defining monumental architecture of this civilization. Structures built not as ordinary buildings, but as sacred mountains, understood within Mesopotamian religious thought as literal meeting points between heaven and earth. This is the specific world Genesis places its account of Babel directly within. It's worth dwelling further on what ziggurats actually meant to the people who built them, because the concept differs significantly from how modern readers often picture ancient towers. A ziggurat was not designed as a habitable building in the way a palace or a house would be. It was constructed as a solid, stepped platform, typically topped by a small shrine, understood within Mesopotamian religious thought as a literal staircase or mountain connecting the divine realm above with the human city below. Excavated examples, such as the well-preserved ziggurat at Uruk, show a structure built almost entirely of mud brick, faced with more durable fired brick on the exterior, rising in successive terraced levels connected by monumental staircases. These structures dominated their surrounding cityscapes both physically and symbolically, representing the single most important religious and civic monument any Mesopotamian city could construct. A genuine architectural embodiment of a community's relationship with its patron deity and, by extension, its political legitimacy and enduring reputation among its neighbors. Before Genesis describes the tower itself, it introduces us to a figure the text treats with unusual, pointed attention: a man named Nimrod. Genesis chapter 10 describes Nimrod as a mighty warrior, or in some translations a mighty hunter, before the Lord, and states that the beginning of his kingdom included Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. This is a genuinely striking detail. Nowhere else in this section of Genesis does the text pause to describe an individual founding a kingdom with named cities in this much detail. Nimrod is presented, however briefly, as a real historical founder figure, associated with a specific, real, and identifiable geography. Remarkably, several of the cities named alongside Babel in this verse are not literary inventions. Erech corresponds to the historical city of Uruk, one of the earliest and most significant cities in all of Mesopotamian history, extensively excavated by archaeologists and considered by many historians among the first true cities in human history. Akkad, though its exact physical location remains undiscovered by modern archaeology despite active searching, is extensively documented in ancient Mesopotamian records as the capital of the powerful Akkadian Empire under King Sargon, one of the most significant political and military figures in the entire ancient Near East. Calneh's precise historical identification remains more uncertain among scholars, though several proposed sites have been suggested. The name Nimrod itself has generated centuries of scholarly discussion, with various historians proposing connections to figures or traditions from Mesopotamian religion and history, including suggestions linking him to legendary founder-king traditions associated with early Mesopotamian rulers, or to the Mesopotamian god Ninurta, associated with hunting and warfare. It's important to be direct about the state of this evidence. No scholarly consensus definitively identifies Nimrod with any single historical figure documented independently in Mesopotamian sources. What we can say with more confidence is that the biblical author placed this figure within a genuinely real geographic and political landscape, naming actual cities whose historical significance archaeology has independently confirmed. But this raises the central mystery of tonight's investigation. If the cities are real and the region is real, what happened to the tower itself? The significance of Uruk in particular deserves further attention here, because it is difficult to overstate its importance to the broader story of human civilization. Extensive excavation, beginning in the early 20th century and continuing intermittently since, has revealed a city that, by the 4th millennium before Christ, had grown to a scale genuinely unprecedented anywhere in the archaeological record up to that point, with monumental temple complexes, sophisticated administrative systems, and some of the very earliest examples of writing yet discovered anywhere in the world, found on clay tablets used for administrative and economic record-keeping. Many archaeologists and historians consider Uruk a serious candidate for the world's first true city in the full sense of that term. That Genesis places this specific, historically monumental site within Nimrod's kingdom is a detail that carries real historical weight, connecting the biblical narrative directly to one of the most significant urban centers in the entire span of human history, rather than to an invented or symbolic location. Genesis chapter 11 describes the people of this land settling in Shinar and deciding to build a city and a tower with its top reaching to the heavens, so that they might make a name for themselves and not be scattered across the face of the earth. For a long time, this description existed for most readers purely as literary or theological image, without a clear physical anchor. That changed considerably once archaeologists began systematically excavating the ruins of ancient Babylon itself, beginning seriously in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and continuing, with interruptions, into more recent decades. At the heart of ancient Babylon's ruins, archaeologists identified the foundation of a massive ziggurat, known in ancient texts as Etemenanki, a Sumerian name generally translated as something like the Temple of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth. Cuneiform tablets describing this structure, along with the excavated foundation itself, indicate a building of genuinely enormous scale for the ancient world. A stepped tower rising in multiple stages from a square base measuring roughly 90 meters or close to 300 feet on each side, dedicated to the Babylonian god Marduk. It's crucial to be precise about the historical relationship here and not overstate it. Etemenanki, in the archaeological and textual record we actually possess, dates primarily to the later Neo-Babylonian period, associated especially with extensive building and restoration projects under King Nebuchadnezzar II in the 6th century before Christ. Many centuries after the traditional dating, many readers associate with the events of Genesis 11. Most scholars do not argue that Etemenanki is literally, physically, the same structure Genesis describes being built. What many scholars do argue, more carefully, is that Etemenanki represents the culmination of a much older, long-running Mesopotamian building tradition. Successive generations of monumental ziggurats built, damaged, and rebuilt on the same sacred site across many centuries, and that Genesis's account likely draws on general, long-standing cultural memory and awareness of this Mesopotamian ziggurat building tradition as a whole, rather than reporting a single specific, precisely dated construction event that archaeology could pinpoint exactly. This distinction matters enormously for honest history. The tower described in Genesis functions, most scholars agree, less as a precise historical blueprint of one specific building and more as a recognizable, culturally accurate representation of the kind of massive religious architecture that genuinely defined Mesopotamian civilization across many centuries. The real, physical embodiment of exactly the ambition Genesis describes, reaching toward the heavens and making a name that would endure. The excavation history of Etemenanki's foundation itself is worth recounting briefly because it illustrates just how much careful, patient work stands behind what we currently know. German archaeologist Robert Koldewey led major excavations at Babylon beginning in 1899, continuing for well over a decade, uncovering substantial portions of the ancient city, including the massive square foundation later identified with Etemenanki, based on its location and dimensions matching descriptions preserved in cuneiform texts, including a detailed Babylonian tablet, now generally known as the Ziggurat tablet. Later political instability, ongoing conflict in the region across the 20th and 21st centuries, and the site's partial submersion beneath groundwater have all significantly limited further excavation since these early efforts, meaning much of what we know about the structure's precise appearance in different historical periods still relies heavily on this combination of early excavation data and ancient textual description, rather than a fully completed modern archaeological survey. Beyond the physical structure itself, Genesis's account of Babel captures something else genuinely accurate about ancient Mesopotamian civilization: its close, explicit connection between monumental building and political power. Throughout Mesopotamian history, kings regularly recorded their building projects, particularly temple and ziggurat construction, in official inscriptions specifically designed to broadcast their power, their piety, and their enduring legacy. The stated motivation Genesis places in the mouths of Babel's builders: "Let us make a name for ourselves," mirrors, almost precisely, language found repeatedly across genuine Mesopotamian royal inscriptions, where kings boast of monumental construction, specifically as a means of establishing lasting fame and demonstrating their favor with the gods. This connects directly back to Nimrod's introduction as a kingdom founder. In the ancient Mesopotamian world, political unification, military conquest, and monumental temple building were consistently understood as interconnected expressions of a single kind of power. A genuinely significant king was expected to unify territory, and a genuinely significant king was expected to build, or rebuild, the great temples and towers that defined his capital's religious identity. Genesis's narrative, read against this specific historical background, presents Babel not simply as one isolated construction project, but as the visible, physical expression of a much larger political ambition, precisely the kind of centralized, name-making imperial project the historical record confirms was genuinely characteristic of early Mesopotamian kingship. Understood this way, the hidden kingdom beneath Babel is not a lost, secret civilization waiting to be dramatically unearthed. It is, more precisely, the accumulated physical and textual record of successive real Mesopotamian kingdoms, layered beneath centuries of rebuilding on the same sacred ground, whose full extent modern archaeology has only partially and gradually recovered. Consider, as one specific example of this pattern, The building inscriptions left by Nebuchadnezzar II, whose extensive restoration of Etemenanki centuries after Genesis's traditional dating survives in his own recorded words, describing his effort to raise the top of the tower so that it might rival the heavens, language striking in its close resemblance to the ambition Genesis attributes to Babel's original builders many centuries earlier. Scholars generally do not read this resemblance as evidence that Nebuchadnezzar's scribes were directly responding to the Genesis narrative, which was likely composed or compiled around this same general period. Rather, most historians see it as evidence that this specific rhetorical ambition, building upward toward heaven to secure lasting fame, represented a genuinely persistent, recurring theme within Mesopotamian royal ideology across many centuries. One Genesis's authors would have recognized as an authentic, recognizable feature of the civilization they were describing, regardless of which specific king or which specific building phase they had most directly in mind. Genesis's account does not end with the tower's construction. It ends with its builders scattered, their single language confused into many, their unified project abandoned before completion. Read purely as ancient history, this scattering has obvious real-world parallels. Mesopotamian civilization, across its long history, was genuinely marked by repeated cycles of political unification, followed by fragmentation, as competing city-states, and later competing empires, rose and fell across many centuries. The linguistic diversity of the ancient Near East, well documented in the surviving textual record, involved multiple distinct language families operating in close geographic proximity, including Sumerian, Akkadian, and later many others. A genuine linguistic complexity that later Mesopotamian scribes and scholars themselves puzzled over and attempted to explain within their own religious and historical frameworks. Genesis's theological explanation for this scattering and linguistic diversity is, of course, distinct from a purely historical political explanation, and the text itself frames the confusion of languages as a direct divine response to human ambition and prideful overreach, rather than as the gradual result of ordinary political and cultural fragmentation across centuries. We should be honest that these are two different kinds of explanation, operating on different levels, rather than claiming archaeology directly proves the specific supernatural mechanism Genesis describes. What archaeology and historical linguistics can confirm is the underlying reality the story addresses, that this specific region of the ancient world was indeed characterized by significant linguistic diversity and repeated political fragmentation. A real historical condition, Genesis's narrative offers its own distinctly theological explanation for. But the story leaves us with one final, quieter mystery, easy to overlook amid the drama of the tower itself. Historical linguistics adds a useful layer of context here as well. The ancient Near East that emerges from the wider archaeological and textual record was home to a genuinely striking diversity of language families existing in close proximity and frequent contact. Sumerian, a language with no known surviving linguistic relatives, alongside Semitic languages like Akkadian and later Aramaic, Hebrew, and many others, each with distinct grammar, vocabulary, and writing conventions, even when sharing the same general cuneiform script for extended periods. This genuine, well-documented linguistic complexity within a relatively compact geographic region is precisely the kind of real-world condition that ancient peoples across many cultures, not only ancient Israel, sought to explain through their own origin narratives, since the practical challenge of a fragmented linguistic landscape would have been an obvious, everyday feature of life for anyone engaged in regional trade, diplomacy, or travel across Mesopotamia's many neighboring city-states and kingdoms. Even today, large portions of ancient Babylon and the wider Mesopotamian landscape surrounding it remain only partially excavated. Decades of political instability and conflict across the region have significantly limited sustained archaeological work at various points since major excavations first began, meaning substantial portions of this ancient world's physical remains genuinely do remain buried, unexplored, and only partially understood, even by professional archaeologists working today. This is worth stating plainly, without exaggeration. We do not currently possess anything resembling a complete physical or textual record of the earliest Mesopotamian city-states Genesis references. What we possess is a partial, genuinely fragmentary picture, assembled gradually across roughly a century and a half of careful, ongoing archaeological work. A picture that has, notably, consistently confirmed the general historical plausibility of Genesis's geographic and cultural details, even where it cannot confirm every specific claim with full certainty. That partial, ongoing picture is itself the honest answer to tonight's central question. The hidden kingdom beneath Babel is not a secret, undiscovered civilization waiting in the dark for a single dramatic revelation. It is the real, layered physical remains of genuine ancient Mesopotamian civilization. Cities, kings, temples, and towers, still being carefully, patiently recovered, one excavation season at a time, confirming, piece by piece, that the world Genesis describes was not simply legend, even where its specific theological interpretation of that world's fall remains, necessarily, a matter of faith rather than archaeology. It's worth noting, too, that new discoveries continue to emerge from this region even now, gradually refining and occasionally revising earlier scholarly conclusions. Satellite imaging and remote sensing technology, increasingly applied to Mesopotamian archaeology in recent decades, has allowed researchers to identify previously unknown site features without the need for immediate physical excavation, offering a promising path toward eventually recovering a fuller picture of this ancient landscape, even amid the practical and political challenges that have long limited traditional on-the-ground fieldwork in the region. Each new season of careful work adds another small piece to a picture that remains, honestly, still very much incomplete. We began tonight with the buried foundation of a tower whose ancient name meant the foundation of heaven and earth, and a question about what kingdom truly stood beneath it. We end with something more honest than a single dramatic discovery. A real region, a real king remembered in a real genealogy, alongside real historically verified cities, and a real architectural tradition of massive, heaven-reaching towers that genuinely defined one of history's earliest and most influential civilizations. Genesis does not give us a precise archaeological blueprint of one single building, datable and locatable beyond dispute. What it gives us, Read carefully alongside the physical and textual evidence historians have patiently recovered, is a story rooted in genuine geographic, cultural, and political knowledge of the ancient Mesopotamian world. A story about the enduring, universal human ambition to build something permanent, to make a name that would outlast any single lifetime, and about the humbling limits every such ambition eventually meets. Perhaps that is the real, lasting truth buried beneath Babel, not a hidden kingdom waiting to be sensationally unearthed in a single discovery, but the patient, ongoing, genuinely remarkable historical record of a real ancient world still being carefully uncovered piece by piece, a record that continues to remind us with each new excavation that the ambition to reach the heavens is a considerably older and considerably more human story than most of us ever realized. A brick foundation, laid in mud and fired by ancient hands, a king's name preserved in a genealogy alongside cities archaeology has independently confirmed, a tower rebuilt across centuries, its ambition recorded again and again in the words of the kings who raised it. None of this settles, on its own, every question a modern reader brings to the story of Babel. But together, it offers something rarer than a single tidy answer: genuine, physical continuity between an ancient text and the actual ground it describes, still being carefully read, one layer at a time.